Hello, happy Thursday. Today is February 10th, it looks like. So we're going to talk about student documentation. Last time we met on Tuesday, I threw up a couple different videos and I asked you to watch some students and really looking at their behavior. And so on your video part of your module today, what I did is I added this student observation document. What this does, it kind of goes through some things you can look for, when you are first doing this. Once you kind of get the idea of this, it's not going to be quite so hard. So when you're doing student observation and you're truly looking at one student's behavior, whether it's academic, behavior, social, social emotional, it could be lots of different things. We're going to be looking at very specific items, and you can add more to these type of questionnaires. This is just an example. Listening. Is the student listening to the teacher? How do we know they're listening? Are they actively engaging in what they're supposed to be doing? Are they talking when the teacher is talking? Are they spacing out? Are they looking at the teacher, engaging with the teacher? And, you kind of figure out those things, and you're going to write those specific things down. Same thing, understanding of directions. How do I know the student understood the directions? Is he doing what I'm asking him to do? Is he asking questions? Is he performing as his peers are performing? Those kind of things. So we're going to go through speech, physical development. Of course, physical development is going to be harder when the student is just sitting in a desk, like the little boy in the orange shirt during the math lesson. He wasn't doing much. But that physical development of the little boy in the blue shirt, that preschooler, you can definitely tell where his mind is. And I love that video of him. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch, because he's directly in a thing called parallel play. That means that he is playing on his own, he's doing his own thing, but every other student in that daycare preschool environment are playing and doing their own thing too, but they're doing it at exactly the same place, but they're not interacting with each other. So it's called parallel play, and it's kind of interesting to watch students do that. But his physical development, look how he's crawling. Did you notice how he was sitting when he was playing with the cars? He is sitting with the W. They call it a W sit, and if you have any background in occupational or physical therapy, that is a big no-no. So to help with his physical development, we really want to discourage students to sit in the W. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch that video. It's about 45 seconds into the video where he's playing with a car and he's sitting with his knees up here and his legs back. It's called a W sit. It's not healthy. Personal control of hands and feet. How are they doing with that? That means if we're touching other students, are we playing with other people's toys? Those kind of things. Social awareness. So we have to look at that little boy in the orange shirt in the 3rd grade. Does he have an awareness around him of what's going on? Does he seem to care? There might be like something more going on with him. The social awareness part, it's hard to tell because he doesn't have a lot of interaction with other students. But the social awareness of the little boy in the blue, he's very aware that there's people around him, but he's so focused on his own play that he doesn't do a lot of interaction. And that's totally normal for that age group. Emotional development, if you see it, write it down. Literacy, number sense, reaction to authority, that's kind of a big one if you're looking at behavior. If the person if a person in charge is telling him to do something and he flat out refuses or does the exact opposite or is ignoring the situation, that's going to be one of those things you have to document too. So is a student imaginative? How is their peer relations, managing feelings, self-confident, righty or lefty? Like any of those kind of things. And if you can think of more, by all means, you can add those in. So when we observe students, we get all this information, and you just can't observe them once. If you look at them for like 1 or 2 minutes on one day, that's not enough time. We're really going to have to make sure we're looking at all of our students to make sure we're giving them proper, observation time. So what I did when I was teaching kindergarten and preschool, it's so crazy. It's so crazy in those classrooms. You're absolutely just like, why? Everybody's running around. It's very hard to get some of this stuff done. So what I would just do is I'd have a clipboard with me, and I would just be like, I had 2 kids a day, because preschool is pretty busy, and it wasn't a long time. I would just jot down things quick about those 2 kids, and then after all the students left, I went back in and filled in a little bit more information about those 2 kids. When I was teaching 3rd grade, I did 4 kids a day, because things are, they're still moving in 3rd grade, but you have them longer. throughout the day, and then it's a little bit slower pace. You can take that time. I would just take a piece of paper and make a quadrant out of it, and then put my 4 focus students on there every day. So if I had a class of 20 or 24, I hit everybody, at least every week to 2 weeks. So, and then what that would be doing is, like, if somebody is having a behavior that keeps coming up and coming up, I didn't notice it before, I can go back and look at it and say, oh, so when did he start doing this behavior or performing this way on a spelling test or whatever it is? I can go back and look. Okay, so that's observation, and today we're going to talk about documentation. So I'm going to get this one off of here, but I do have this under the video, so you're welcome to look at that. How to collect data and how to write reports. There is probably a million different ways. So this is from a website. It's called Brooks Blog, and it is 6 ways to collect data on your students' behavior. And this is, you can do a tally mark. So if it's a frequency thing, if you're saying, okay, how often is something happening in your classroom, then you just make frequency marks, like tally marks in it. You could do interval recording, meaning that you're going to stop after every so many minutes and break it into different chunks and record what's happening during those chunks of times. You can do anecdotal recording. That's where you just write down really quick what you saw and what was happening in there. What you don't want to do with anecdotal recording is saying, I feel, I think, he should, she should, blah, blah, blah. Nope, keep your own personal opinions out of this. This is not where that belongs. So this is just stating the facts. So we are going to be saying, okay, so Johnny did this, Emily did this, Sid did this, whatever it is, we're going to write down exactly what happened and then possibly your reactions to that. So, Johnny was hitting Emily. Teacher stopped Johnny by redirecting him, comforted Emily, blah, blah, blah. So you can just say what you did, but we don't want to say, I think, I feel. If you come in there saying, I think Johnny is a troubled child and we need to get him into counseling or whatever it is, that's not your place. So we're not going to say, I think, I feel, because first of all, being a first-year student, or first-year teacher especially, we really don't have that background. And then even if you are a master teacher and you're in that situation, you really don't have the qualifications to diagnose anybody. So we're not going to be doing that. We're just going to be stating the facts. Okay, so you can look at school records and see, what have happened before. You can do screening instruments. This means like, when you get a little farther in your education classes, you're going to learn a thing called RTI, which is response to intervention. So the student's response to your intervention. So if you're going to help little Johnny stop a behavior, then what are you going to try? That's your intervention. And then what is that student's response to that intervention to see if it worked? If it didn't work, then you document it, document what you did. And it's pretty straightforward as far as that. You're going to be just going what you see, skip the I feels, I thinks, and that doesn't belong in here. Now, documentation can be daunting, and it can be long and hard and terrible. I understand this because it's not the fun part of teaching, but there is ways to make it better. So what I have found, so this is another way a teacher did it. She just had a behavior notebook that she did. Some of them use QR codes, some of them use behavior charts. If you've ever used Teacher Paid Teachers, they've got some really great ones on that website, and sometimes they're free, sometimes they're cheap. I don't really recommend paying for a lot of this stuff, so if you can look at what they're doing and maybe replicate it to what it's working for you in your classroom, that's where you do it. You can also just Google like student documentation, and you can kind of come up with quite a few different things that might be, let me get my picture out of here, there we go, that might be appropriate for what you're looking for. You can make your own. I personally, when I first started out with this, I just had a spiral bound notebook, and I was just put my things in it in the quadrants of 4. But then once I got kind of better at it, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cute if we got on Teachers Pay Teachers and got some really cute stuff? And so then it would go on to this, and sometimes I would put like, oh, that's not a very good one. Something that you were going to be writing on documentation forms, and I made it cute. I made it something that was helpful to me. So that's where I kind of went from there. But my first couple of years, honestly, was just like spiral bound notebooks. I knew I had to get it done. Okay, so now once you've got all this documentation together and you've observed the child and you have this information, how do you get it into like a legal form? Well, what I have done, I just wrote it up into Microsoft Word or Google, and you just write it in paragraph form. So you can break it down into anecdotal, you can break it down into tally marks, you can break it down into however you're keeping track of your information. But the best thing to do is don't forget your dates, like when you saw the student do this, what it was a frequency of it. It was happening like only every Monday. Maybe it was only happening 3 days a week. And then you can go back and look, and the mom might say, oh, well, he's with his dad every Sunday, so maybe that's, and it's a different, parents aren't living together, so maybe something is happening that he is acting out on Mondays. Maybe he wants to go back to dad. Maybe it's a sad thing that they're leaving each other. Something like that could be happening. It could be a medication thing. It could be a food allergy thing. It could be just a change in households, if that's the case. I mean, it could be a million different things, but we don't know that until we start documenting it. So I had a student one time, like I said before, the little girl with the medication I talked about last week. But there was another time I had to do this, and there was a student in my classroom who was, he had trouble. He had trouble when he came to school in the morning, and so mornings were rough, like really rough, and he wasn't really feeling better up until about lunchtime, and then lunch and after it was better. And so, but in the elementary classroom, like the beginning of your day is kind of when you hit your meat and potatoes, you hit the reading and the math and all that big stuff. And so I was noticing that his behavior after lunch and before lunch was a lot different. Well, what happened is that he was on some medication, and he wasn't getting his medication until like right before he left for school. And so it really wasn't kicking in until about 11 o'clock. And so then after lunch, he was like a million times better. So once we started knowing that, the parents started giving him the medication right when he first got up. And so then we started seeing better results right around 9 to 10, instead of like at lunchtime. So that was an easy fix, right? We had other students that were not completing math assignments during the math time that I was giving them. And what ended up happening is, like, after observing him, I would watch the student. He would get out, he would act like he was doing math, but he never got anything done. He didn't write anything on his paper because he preferred to do math at home. He had help, he had mom, he had his older brother to help him with his math. That's fine. But when it came to like mom telling me, oh, he's got so much homework at night, I kind of thought, well, let's go back and look to why. Why is he having so much math homework at night? It was because he's not doing math during the day. So, but sometimes if you've got a class of 25 kids and you're helping with different math things, you don't know that the student is not doing math until you've actually had that documentation. So then once you type it up and you have that legal documentation, you may need it, you may not need it. It might just be one of those things where you talk to parents about, or like I said before, it might be something of social service nature that you need to document. It might be a medical thing. Sometimes school psychologists and school behaviorists need that information to start an IEP on a student if they feel like there's a learning disability in there. So your documentation is pretty critical, but how you observe your students is going to affect how you document that information. Hope that was clear. I just kind of rambled for 15 minutes there. Hopefully you kind of got what I was talking about. I would love to talk to you about this. If you have any questions or want to chat more about it, please just let me know. All right, if not, hope your week is going well, and I will talk to you next Tuesday. Thanks.